So guys, for these examples, I'm going to assume you're looking at this, so you need to look at the example worksheet. So list the amplitude, period, domain, and range of each function, then sketch the graph of the function over one period. Probably should wait to ask for domain and range after you do the graph, but hey, mistakes happen. So based off the formula we had earlier, we're going to figure out what our letters are going to be. Here is a hidden A, here's our B, and there's no H to worry about. So on these, the reason I didn't ask for midline is there is no midline shift. So the first thing we're going to try to find is our amplitude. And for the rest of the examples after this one, we're just going to call it amp for short. But amplitude is equal to the absolute value of A. So the amplitude is going to equal the absolute value of 1, because if there's no number for A or B, you assume there's a 1. And the absolute value of 1 is 1. Next thing we're going to find is our period. Now the period, we'll call it PER for short, is 2 pi divided by whatever the number B is. So we'll do 2 pi divided by 1. Notice the pi's don't cancel. And this would end up being 2 pi for the period. Now since, even though I didn't necessarily ask to list this, I am going to still point it out, the midline in this problem, since there's no H is equal to 0. So the max would equal 0 plus 1. And the min will equal whatever 0 minus 1 is. So that's going to be 1 and negative 1. So there's two ways I would ask you to sketch the graph. But you got the hard part done now. One is we can sketch the graph by hand, or if you want to, we can do it in Desmos to some extent. Now, the reason I say Desmos isn't bad, you will start here at the middle, already typed in. The highest is going to be 1, the lowest is going to be negative 1. So what I want for a sketch of your graph today, we'll start here. I just want you to draw a rough sketch like this. Now, most of them will look like this, but there will be some that don't. So don't assume, oh, I'm going to get it all done ahead of time. The highest point on the graph here is 1. The lowest point on the graph is negative 1. What I need to see is what this point is when it starts to repeat itself. And the nice thing about Desmos is, you know, you may have to zoom out. You may have to play around with it, but it would start repeating here at 2 pi. Now, I don't want you to always assume the period in this is the same. Math 3 it will be, it will not be in Math 4. So we've got the amplitude, we got the period, we got the sketch of the graph. This is how much detail I expect in the graph. And then I want you to do your domain. The domain on non-word problems will be negative infinity to infinity, but the range will change sometimes, but the lowest is negative 1, the highest is 1. And that's what you would need for questions like number 1. Now we're going to look at questions like number 2. Number 2, you have y is equal to 4 sine of 2x. This number here is your A, this number here is your B, and once again no H. So we're going to first find our amplitude. So amp is equal to the absolute value of A. So amp is equal to the absolute value of 4. So the amp in this case is 4. So at this point, I'm just going to say this out loud. The radius of the circle this represents is 4. Now we're going to find the period. To find the period, we're going to do the same formula, 2 pi divided by b. So we're going to do 2 pi divided by 2. Well, we know that since the pi does not cancel, you should have a pi in your final answer. And if you need to use a calculator to do division, I'm not going to say anything, but it's easier if you're able to do it by hand. So 2 over 2 reduces to 1. So this is really just going to be pi. And even the midline, once again, h is equal to 0, so the max, this time it'll be 0 plus 4, which is 4, and the min will be 0 minus 4, which is negative 4. But once again, if we type it in Desmos to get a pretty picture of it, this one is going by faster than the previous problem. Now once again, this graph will start at 0, 0, but the highest it's going to hit is 4. The lowest it's ever going to hit is negative 4. And the place it's going to start repeating is this point right here, which is pi. So I'm going to make this one just a little bit more narrower just because I want to, because it's technically skinnier. But this is how much detail I want on the graph. And then give me the domain, which would be negative pi to pi, or I'm sorry, negative infinity to infinity. And the range this time, the lowest this graph goes is negative 4. The highest this graph goes is 4. So, well, I guess I should box off how much you actually have to show. There's this piece, and then there's your domain and range, and you gave me the amplitude and the period. So now, let's look at question 3, and this one throws a wrench into the machine. This graph is y equals negative 3 sine of 2x. I'm sorry, pi x. Man, that's a beautiful pi I just drew. So this time, this is your A, this is your B, and we still have no H. I'm not going to list the A, well, I will quickly, but we're going to find the amplitude of this function. So the amplitude is always equal to the absolute value of A. The amplitude in this case is equal to the absolute value of negative 3, but since amplitude or absolute value is always positive, the amplitude is 3. So what this means is the radius is actually 3. To do our period this time, period is equal to 2 pi divided by b. We're going to have 2 pi divided by, this case, is going to be pi. This is where you have to understand canceling rules from all your maths. Since there's a pi and a pi on top, the pi's cancel, and we're going to be left with a 2. And this time the period of the function is 2. Just for sake of just doing the same thing over and over again, the midline here is h, or h is 0. So the max is going to equal to 0 plus 3, which is 3. And the min is going to equal to 0 minus 3, which is negative 3. So I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to type it in Desmos quickly. So guys, here's my graph of it in Desmos. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So here's the thing I want you to notice. It does still start at 0, 0, but it doesn't go up first. It goes down first because of the negative. So what's actually going on in this beautiful picture that's a little blurry on your end right now is you still start here at 0, 0, but the graph is going to do this number instead. The reason is, think about this from, if regular graphs of standard position, when we drew a circle, went counterclockwise, this is that negative, and the formula is making this go clockwise. So it's like I'm going down first. So like on a circle, it's like if this is standard position, it's going down first, then back up, then down. So this is why it goes down first. But anyway, Let's get the rest of this out of the way. The max is 3. The min is -3. And get these points out of the way. So I'm going to kind of zoom out a little bit. So that's where my graph starts, and then it starts repeating at 2. So this point is 2, and there's your graph over one period. Once again, your domain is -infinity to infinity, and your range will be from -3 to 3. So we're going to do one more for this video, and I will tell you guys to practice. So number 4 is y is equal to -10 sine of 1/2 x. So this would be your A. The 1/2 is your B. And you're going to have to be very careful how you type this in. So the amplitude is equal to the absolute value of A. So the amplitude is equal to the absolute value of -10. So we got the previous problem. So the amplitude is equal to +10. So the radius of this circle that's in this problem is 10. So the period is still going to be 2 pi divided by b, but this time it's 2 pi divided by 1/2. Since in the previous problem we had a pi on top and a pi on bottom, so they went away. This time the pi is still going to be there somewhere, but the 2 divided by 1/2 is not 1, because if I was to actually do this, 2 divided by 1/2 is actually 4. So the period this time is 4 pi. And once again, midline in this case is equal, h is equal to 0. Find the max of your graph. It's equal to 0 plus 10, which is 10, and the min would be 0 minus 10, which is -10. But once again, going to start my graph here. So I did kind of cheat, like showing you guys this, but what I'm going to do here is I know this will be 0 because of that. I know the highest is going to be 10 and the lowest will be -10. And I guess the reason I wanted to kind of show that for this last example is if we type this in Desmos, I'm going to type in -10 and then change this to 1. I guess I have to put parentheses for that 1/2. Wow, that looks bad. But wait, if I zoom out or zoom in, you'll see that it actually has a pretty good look. But this graph is going down first because of the negative, so if I was to sketch this graph over one period, it would look like this. The highest is, as I said, 10. The lowest is -10. Now I'm going to see how long it takes to go through one cycle before it repeats itself, and it's 4 pi. You probably will see a pattern today, but the reason why is if 4 pi, then the b's how many times it goes through to get through 2 pi, so half of 4 would be 2 pi. Anyway, I just think that's interesting. Anyway, we're going to find our domain. Our domain is still -infinity to infinity because the graph is going forever in the left direction, and the range in this case would be from -10 to 10. So yep, go ahead and do the problems of the very first, the definitions, and the first set of questions, and then come back and watch the second or the next video.